Welcome back. We're in double figures in module number 2. We are up to lesson number 10. This one, you'll be pleased to know, is not about copyright. We've moved on, albeit briefly, from copyright, and I want to talk to you about another part of your intellectual property, and that form of intellectual property is your trademarks. Now, I love a bit of trademark work. It's one of my favourite areas as a lawyer, and it's not even restricted to music trademarks. It's a really interesting area of law, and it's a really important area of law. So far, we've talked about your brand value, and we've talked about your musical works, your recordings, and your songs. And let's face it, that's very important stuff, very important generating of income comes from your copyright works. But there is another set of values that you as a recording artist or even a performer bring to the table. Another set of income earning intellectual property. And that is your brand. Now, later on in this course, we're actually going to go and do a little bit of a deeper dive into the concept of the artist as a brand. But while we're in this legal basis of the music industry area, I want to pay a little bit of attention to this concept of trademark and how you can own particular elements of your brand. Now, one of the key things that you have, no matter how small or how big you are as an artist, is you have a relationship with your audience. And that relationship is based on certain characteristics that they recognize in you. One of those characteristics is, of course, your name. There might be other characteristics. It might be a logo that they identify with you. It might be a saying or a phrase or some other element that they immediately identify with you. And this is an important part of your brand value, but it's not protected by copyright. This area of law is trademark law, and that's what we're now going to investigate in the context of you as a musical artist. All right. Now, what is symbolic of your relationship with your audience? Obviously, your name, whether it's your actual name or whether it's your stage name, whether it's David Bowie or Lady Gaga or whatever the name that you perform under, that means something to your audience. And certainly if it's a band name, one would hope that your band name means something to your audience, that it's something that they identify you with. I mean, let's face it, it's what's on the cover of your album, as the example behind me, or it could be some other element of your identity. So it could be a famous logo or a graphic representation of your brand. If you think of the Rolling Stones, most of you will immediately think of the famous tongue logo. Or if you think of that great Australian band, AC/DC, yes, for those of you who didn't know, yep, AC/DC is an Australian band. You remember their very, basic but very, very memorable logo. And in fact, most of you will identify the logo of the band Kiss, and every one of you will remember that. And most of you would be aware that Kiss are one of the great examples of how to merchandise their logo. Gene Simmons from Kiss was actually interviewed once about the use of the Kiss brand, and they were asking him, Gene, at Kiss you seem to have an enormous number of products. You can pretty much put a Kiss logo on anything and your fans will buy it. And Gene thought about this for a moment and looked back at the interviewer and said, yep, at Kiss we have Kiss condoms and we have Kiss coffins. We get you when you're coming and we get you when you're going. I apologise for that joke. But he actually did say that, I swear. Gene actually said that. And it's true. They do have Kiss condoms and Kiss coffins. Okay. All right. Now, all of those different elements have the capability of receiving trademark protection and more. You can get trademark protection even for a title of a song. Remember I said you couldn't copyright a song title? Well, you can get trademark protection for a song, but not for the category of songs. So recently I had a client, an artist here in Australia, who had a famous song, his most popular song, and he registered a trademark for the use of that song title as a festival. He also registered a trademark for that same song title for the use as a wellness centre. He's into all that kind of wellness stuff. And so there's lots of different elements of your brand that are actually capable of trademark protection. So here's the key thing about trademarks. Trademark gives you exclusive rights. It means to the exclusion of anybody else. So if a band registers their logo, if a band registers their name, or even some identifying characteristic, for example, Lady Gaga probably has a trademark for the words Little Monsters because that identifies her fan base, in exactly the same way that Kiss probably have a trademark for Kiss Army. So any element of your brand is capable of trademark protection. Well, if depending on a few elements of trademark law. The exclusivity is the important thing. It means that you can use that element of your brand to the exclusion of anybody else. You can prevent somebody else from trading with a name or a logo that is deceptively similar to yours. Now, if you're McDonald's and you think of the golden arches, that is an incredibly powerful trademark. If I was to open a hamburger store and put the golden arches over the door, that would say something very specific about that brand. Or rather, it would say something very specific about my hamburger store. People would expect to see that hamburger store selling the very familiar McDonald's product. McDonald's wouldn't be very happy if I was to put the golden arches over my hamburger store. Nike would not be very happy if you designed some sneakers and put the Nike swoosh on your sneakers. That's their brand value. So this is how trademarks work. You register your trademark, whatever it is, and I've said it could be a number of different things, you register that for the goods and services that you want to use that trademark in relation to. Now, trademark law is similar right around the world. All goods and services are divided into 45 classes. So everything, every product or service that's ever been thought of will be squeezed into one of those 45 classes. Now, you don't register in every class. There's no point, particularly if you're an artist or a band, in registering for earth-moving equipment unless you've got a very unusual idea about merchandising. You're not going to register for pharmaceuticals, or you're not going to register for a whole bunch of things. There's no point. You register for the classes of goods and services that you intend using. Now, even big brands like McDonald's or Virgin or Nike or any of those global brands, they're not going to register it for every product or service. You'd say, well, why wouldn't they? They can afford to. It costs $300 in Australia per class, but if you're Nike, who cares? It's only $300. 45 times 300 is not very much if you're that sort of brand. But trademarks work on a use it or lose it basis. So if you register for particular goods and services and you don't use that trademark, another trader can come along and say, well, hang on, that's not fair. They've got exclusive rights over that name in relation to goods and services that they've got no intention of using it for, and they can have your trademark basically thrown out for non-use, or at least in relation to those goods and services. So it's a strategic thing that you need to think about. Now, if you're an artist or a band or a songwriter or a performer, there's probably a limited number of classes that you need to register for. So if your trademark lawyer is telling you, yeah, register for all 45 classes, they're probably trying to squeeze a few extra dollars out of you. Don't do it. You only need to register for very specific goods and services. Most artists will register in class 41 because class 41 is the live performance category. It is a lot of other things as well. It's education, for example, is in class 41, but definitely live performance. So if you're planning on performing live, which I hope most of you are, and your brand is of particular value to you, I would suggest registering in class 41. Live performances, concerts, events, festivals, all that sort of thing is in class 41. If you have merchandise, if you've got clothing, t-shirts, caps, any form of apparel, you should register in class 25. That is the class that covers clothing and apparel. And probably you should also register in class 9. Class 9 is the class that covers basically audio recordings. So if you don't want another artist recording and releasing music under a name that is deceptively similar to yours, you register in class 9. Now they're the three classes that you need to register for if you are going to register a trademark for your brand. Of course, that's not the only classes that you could register for. If you, for example, have a plan to do your own range of cosmetics or perfumes, no problem. You should register in class 3 for that. And if you're Beyonce or someone, I guarantee she has a registered trademark in class 3 for her name. Of course, no, she doesn't want somebody else releasing Beyonce perfume because most of the fans out there will assume that it's her and somebody's going to get a free ride off the back of her fame and notoriety. So she would undoubtedly have a trademark in class 3. Some artists, for example, the one I gave you before, registered a trademark in relation to surfboards and wellness retreats. Others have their own homeware range. They think that they're the next Martha Stewart or something like that. And of course, musical instruments would be a logical category for some musicians who are very much likely to have their own branded guitar or branded keyboard or whatever. They would possibly register in that class as well. So the more you want, the more it's going to cost you, but it is a really important and valuable thing to do, particularly if your brand is starting to attract attention from other companies. All right, very briefly, I'm going to touch on international trademarks. There is, as I talked to you about copyright before, there is a global system of registering trademarks, but unfortunately, it doesn't come for free. If you are going to register your trademark in other countries, unfortunately, you're going to have to go through the registration process in those countries. And that could get expensive. In Australia, I can tell you that it's $300 per class in government fees. And let's say you're in 3 classes, that's $900. And there's 178 or 190 countries around the world that you could register trademarks in. You don't want to spend $900 in every country of the world, I guarantee you. So be careful with your ambitions when it comes to registering trademarks. It is an expensive exercise, and I wouldn't suggest registering outside of your home market until you really have some sort of presence in that territory. Don't just do it as a precaution, because it's a very expensive precaution. Trademarks, unlike copyright, as you know, copyright expires after 70 years. Trademarks don't expire. You can keep renewing your trademark as long as you like. You can renew it and your next of kin can renew it forever. But you do have to pay the registration fee every 10 years. So again, if you've registered your trademark in relation to your artist name or your brand or your logo or something, and you're not using that logo 10 years from now, you probably don't need to renew that trademark. It's probably unnecessary. But if you are continuing to use it, it's worth paying the registration fee and keeping that trademark alive. All right, so to sum up trademark, it's an important area. It's not as immediate as your copyright as a form of intellectual property. It's not spoken about as much as copyright, but it's important. And if you've got the funds available, I'd recommend that you protect your brand assets, your logo, your name, any key words that are associated with you as a brand. I would suggest that you protect those as soon as you're in a position to afford to register a trademark. The other thing I should just mention in relation to trademark is when you're dreaming up your wonderful band name, it's probably a good idea to check that somebody else hasn't already registered a trademark for your brand name or your band name. It's kind of sad if you've put a bit of work into your new name and you've started doing gigs and maybe you're starting pitching yourself at record companies and you discover that there's another band out there that's already registered a trademark. So probably a good idea to do a trademark search before you settle on a artist name or a important part of your branding. Might be a good idea to protect yourself against possible trademark infringement and having to change your name. That would not be too much fun. All right, so that's trademark. We're powering through module number 2, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks very much for checking this one out.